once again. Good evening, everybody. Oh, it is starting. Human City Junction's in the house. Heath, good afternoon. Good evening. Hey, it's Big Bill coming to you live from Model Railroading Live, the number one model railroading show in the universe. And we have a very special guest tonight. We haven't been on for a while, not due to anything medical or anything like that. Just taking a break, just, enjoying the rest of the summer as it wound down or winded down, and we were just catching up on getting the last barbecue in and stuff like that, and just enjoying ourselves here in the good old Staten Island. So tonight we have a special guest with us, and I'll introduce him momentarily. Just want to give you guys a heads up that Johnny's Train Talk show will be premiering tomorrow night on the 7th of October, and he will be on at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And all shows on the Model Railroading venue are at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So just so you know that. And what else? Yeah, he'll be premiering tomorrow night. We've started the first premiere of it's the Railroad Empire, How We Build Them. They've come back with a first live show, and then they'll be doing some pre-recorded stuff, and which I think is going to work out really well. And we're lining up some more guests for Who's Big Bill Talking To, and stuff like that. So, like I said, Johnny's Train Talk show tomorrow night is premiering. Big show. He's got some big changes coming down the pike. Wants to get it out there. So you guys got to tune in tomorrow. Get ready with all your model railroad questions. It's the kind of show where you can join in, just like we're doing here. You can join in. He'll have a link ready and available. So if you want to bring something, bring and brag, by all means, please do. Please do. And if you have a train question, electrical, track, train, cleaning, whatever, you can bring it. We got some people in there that actually know what they're doing. They do. They're model railroaders, just like the rest of you guys. So with that said, I will, that's all I have to say. So I won't wait. And we have our guest in the green room. I hope that he didn't, because we haven't been on for a while. So we had that gasoline sushi in there still. Somebody forgot, Ari or John forgot to clean out the fridge. So, and we had an old can of Pepsi in there that was open. So I don't know if it went flat. But anyway, our guest tonight is Otto Vondrak. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. We'll find out. The editor of Railroad Model Craftsman. This is the October issue, Oregon Joint Line. Very good. So without further ado, let's welcome Otto to Who's Big Bill Talking To.
Oh, hey, Bill. I wanted to tell you that gas station sushi in the green room is, I think it might be going bad.
You think? Did you, you got something in your teeth there, Otto?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have the Pepsi?
I brought my own.
Oh, good. Because that was an open can, and I don't know. The air conditioner is a little funky in there. So,
I understand we're on a budget here. It's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. If it doesn't, if it moves, we put some duct tape. If it's too stiff, we WD-40 it. So, and the guy who helps us out, the couple of checks that we gave him bounced. So
I understand.
Yeah, we won't get into that. Well, did I pronounce your last name right, Otto?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Oh, good. And what kind of name is that, Vondrak?
My family is Czech.
Czech.
Yeah, so it's Czech Republic, Czechoslovakian.
Oh, okay. Still have family over there?
Probably, yeah. I used to tell the kids when I was in elementary school, when they would make fun of me, I said, "You better be careful because I'm related to Dracula." And they believed me. Vondrak, Dracula. It totally made sense.
Right. Of course. Why not? So that's very good. Yeah, and you're also a New Yorker. You live up in Rochester?
I do. I'm up in Rochester, New York now. Yep, up on the North Coast, as we say.
on the north here, as we say down here in the city, the other New Yorkers.
The other New York, yes.
The other New Yorkers. So, I said that one time to a guy in Cooperstown. Yeah, I was visiting up there, and I said, where are you from? And he says, oh, I'm from around here, Cooperstown. I said, oh, you're the other New Yorker. And he said, no, you're a smart ass, right? I said, I'm from New York. Of course I'm a smart ass.
That's what we do. Yeah.
That's what we do. Come on.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget it.
I tell you a true story. I went to Chicago to see the Chicago White Sox play.
I'm sorry. I mean, that's cool.
I wanted to see.
No, Kaminsky Park. It's a cool place. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were in the elevator, and we were coming down, and there were other guys visiting, and one of the employees, the hotel employees, were in, and I said, "Hey, you guys going to the game?" And they go, "Yeah, we're big Chicago White Sox fans." I said, "Yeah, that's pretty good." I said, I'm not really too crazy about their uniform. I said, who really has a great looking uniform? And the guy goes, who? I said, well, the New York Yankees, pinstripe, the NY interlocking, the whole thing. So they get off, and the guy looks at me, the employee, and he goes, oh, you friggin' New Yorkers are the same. I'm like, what? What are you talking about?
How can we help it that we have the best uniform in the league? I'm sorry. Right.
What, that's my fault, So, well, Otto, thank you so much for being on the show and reaching out. How this happened, me and Otto go, how long we go back now? A couple of emails, right?
Years, decades.
Well, yeah, well, emails anyway. I wrote a letter to the editor, and when you write a letter to the editor, you never expect the editor to reply. And my letter wasn't condescending, nor was it facetious or complaining. It was just a tongue-in-cheek kind of letter, thinking it's different from the other letters they get, and it would be fun to print. And then next thing I know, I get an email and I see the name Otto Vondrak. I said, that's the editor of Craftsman. Why? What?
Yeah, I know that jerk. What's he writing me for? Yeah.
And I'm like,
do I owe him money? Yeah.
Well, here's what was going through my mind. See, I said to my wife, I said, honey, I said, Otto Vondrak has sent me an email, and it's gravy train time. I'm going to write for them, and they're going to publish my layout, and I'm going to be a millionaire.
Millionaire.
She's like, go ahead, answer him. And then I answered, and it was just like, hey, tell me a little bit about your, tell me a little about your layout. And that was great, because I've never had that experience. I don't know if anybody else.
Really? No one's ever asked you to see your layout when you tell them you have a layout?
No. Yes, people do, but then editors of Railroad Model Craftsmen don't.
Wow. And like I said, we're a full service organization here.
And I was duly impressed. So I figured, since you answered me, I would step out on the limb and say, hey, Otto, how would you like to be on our show? And be a part of this crazy, groovy model railroading live thing.
And the check cleared, and here I am.
And there you go. See, money talks, bullshit walks. I know. Hey, question, Otto. How many photos should someone submit for your layout? Asking for a friend. That was from
Mr. Split Rock. I can tell you exactly how many photos. Anywhere from like 20 to 30 photos is good for us to choose from. 20 on the low end is fine, because we're not going to use all 20, but we definitely want to be able to choose from a variety of different scenes. Close up, far away scenes, vertical scenes, horizontal scenes. Definitely want to have some vertical scenes so we can plan for a potential cover. As you can see, like, the cover has all this writing on it that we have to put on here also, and I have to fit a train in here. I leave a lot of room top and bottom for a cover photo, so we can put the logo, the UPC code, mailing box, things like that, but also just having a variety of scenes, trains going to the left, trains going to the right. We want to be able to have something we can choose from. And Mr. Split Rock, I hope I hear from you very soon. Or your friend. Yes.
Human City Junction Heath asks, when you write a letter to the editor, who would read it if not the editor?
Fair question, because the address that we publish and my email address is published in the magazine also. But if you read the safety valve column, which is our letters to the editor, right here, safety valve. We publish, we say, send your notes to safetyvalve@rrmodelcraftsman.com. And those are read by myself and also my associate editor, Harry K. Wong. So we're both reading them, and we'll both respond depending on, what the letter's about. But we do read every letter and we do respond to every letter.
How when working on a magazine such as this, do you guys have a central office where you work out of, or are you guys sort of like what we do here, where we're in different locations? Because I noticed that Mr. Wong is in San Francisco. Am I correct?
Correct. Yep.
You're right. So, do you guys work in a satellite, kind of like through the Zoom and?
All the White River publications are actually decentralized. The only central office we have is outside Kansas City, where our warehouse and our accounting is. So all the subscriptions, all the customer service stuff, that's all processed in Kansas City. Pardon me, myself, I'm in New York. Harry's in California. Other associate editor, Justin Franz, he's in Montana. And my graphic designer, Todd Gillette, he's in Kansas City. And just throughout the day, everyone has their assignments. Everyone knows what they're doing. We just call each other as we need to. We shoot an email off, but pretty much, we're just used to working in this decentralized fashion. I've worked from home for years since I started working for the magazines, so we've just always been this way. And sometimes it sucks not being able to just be in an office together and just kind of chat and chill out. But on the other hand, it's a pretty relaxed environment where we can kind of work distraction free, if you will.
How is the magazine laid out? Is it done digitally with you guys meeting on a because I've worked on, in school I've worked on literary magazines where you had the paste and cut, and
sure,
this is where we want this to be and this is how we want this to look,
and the electronic format's not much different. You're still putting text where you want it to be and the photos where you want it to be. The whole magazine, all of our magazines are designed with Adobe InDesign, which is a page layout program. And my staff, we work on a system, Dropbox. It's how we share files. So there's, instead of having it's like having a server that we can work on in real time. And each article is its own file. So, Todd could be working in one section and I can be working in another, and we're not interfering with each other. For example, Harry works on the front of the book. He does Receiving Yard, which are new product announcements. He does Test Track, which is our product reviews. So those are separate sections. He can work on those. Todd works on the features mostly, and the columns like company photographer, craftsman workshop, diverging points, things like that. And then I just kind of come in behind and kind of trim up where we need to. I'm more or less directing the show and making sure that everyone else is working on what they need to work on. And I just kind of step in where I'm needed. But having that Dropbox environment, it more or less keeps a copy of all the files on all of our computers simultaneously. And then anytime one of us makes an update, it gets updated on our other computers too. So it's like working in real time, and it's pretty efficient.
Split Rock 323 asks, how many issues are in progress at one time? 3 months ahead? 4?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's not that complicated. We literally just put November issue to bed on Monday. And I'm working on December right now. So this is the beginning of October, and I'm working on December. And we only have 1 month in production at a time. I do have future issues scheduled. We have a general idea of what's going to be coming up in the next few months or so. But we don't actually start working on the issue until it's time for that issue. we just don't have the resources to be working on 3 or 4 issues simultaneously. So,
Right.
but we already know what's going to be in January. We already know what's going to be in February. And that's not to say that things don't kick out or we make changes at the last minute, but for the most part, we know what our cover story is going to be ahead of time, and then the other features fill in after that.
How is it? Are people banging on the door to get their train layouts in your magazine?
They are, and it's a good problem to have. And I feel bad because I only have 12 times a year I can feature a layout, and I like to generally, as a rule, I like to feature this month's layout tour on the cover. I feel if it's important enough for to visit, it's important enough to put on the cover.
Right.
And sometimes we will visit people's layout, and it won't be a full-on layout tour. We might be talking about something about an operational aspect, and it might be a different type of layout visit in the same issue. But your traditional layout tour with 6 or 8 pages and a nice diagram and narrative about how the railroad is built and operated, that's generally our cover story each month. When we start heading into the spring months, that's when I turn my attention to featuring layouts that'll be potentially on this year's National NMRA Tour. And I like to feature at least 3 or 4 layouts leading up to that year's NMRA convention so that people get excited about what's going to happen this summer. Now, we've been thrown off the last couple of years. We're doing all this promotion, all of a sudden, no convention. So I'm hoping we get back to normal in 22. I'm looking forward to traveling again. But that's generally the schedule. So in the spring, we're leading up to convention coverage, and then the rest of the year, I try to leave these slots open so we can feature non-convention layouts.
Right. Human City Junction asks, what is your plan in regarding the publishing industry going digital? Will you continue the print option, go completely digital? What is the 5-year plan?
That's another great question, and I know we were talking about this earlier.
Right.
Um, when when we worked for Karstens, we were actually the first to market with digital editions for Model Railroad magazines. Um, our digital editions came out at the end of 2011, and at the time, it really seemed like this is something urgent we need to get on right away. It really seemed like digital was taking off. Everyone's getting an iPad. We better hop on this. And we imagined like, okay, here's print and digital, and at some point, okay, right now print is going to subsidize the digital editions, and at some point, digital is going to overtake. Fewer people will do print, and then digital is going to be here, and we're going to be subsidizing the print edition. That hasn't exactly happened. It hasn't taken off in that respect. And I think, there's a number of reasons. I think at the end of the day, people like to hold the magazine in their hands and have the experience of reading a magazine. The flip side is, what do we do with all these books and magazines that we collect over a lifetime? Before you ask, we are not doing a digital archive. It's not cost effective, and it's not something we're thinking about. So, okay, we're not offering a digital archive. Right now, RMC only goes back to 2011. And, what else can we do? Right now, we're forging ahead. We're working on a solution to get all of our railroad publications into digital editions. And we'll just continue to see where it goes. I think there's always going to be a future for print. In fact, there's more print magazines today than there were a decade ago or even 20 years ago. So print's not going away, and even if print does reduce in some fashion, it's still not going to go entirely away. You may see the cost increase. Costs are always going up; they're never going down. You may see the cost of production increase over time, but there's always going to be print.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I subscribe to some print magazines. One of them being a news magazine called World Magazine, and they're always in their editorials are always laminating and going on about the cost of postage and then hence they raise the price of their, subscription. But
Postage is a huge cost, yeah,
yeah,
that we don't control.
but exactly, and understand that there's more postage increase coming down the line for them, and for many print magazines. So that reflects in the price and the subscription that you get. Human City says again. He asks if I'm highlighted in your magazine because, of course, I'm so famous. Would I get a free copy of the issue?
No, you get 5 free copies.
Oh, okay.
Or however the compensation works out. We have a standard compensation agreement that every author fills out for us, and complimentary copies are part of the deal. You can choose monetary compensation. You can choose a credit for shopping in the White River store. But yeah, everyone gets compensated, and yes, we get you a couple issues.
Okay. Split Rock 323 says, how much photo editing do you or White River like to do with submitted photographs? Do you prefer the author to supply the final photo?
It really depends. Usually, when we're developing a story with an author, I will ask to see a few samples before we commit to doing a full-on story, and usually I can tell from those samples how much work they're going to need, or I might need to tell the author, hey, you've got the right idea, these are great scenes, but we need photos with full depth of field, or we need you to do whatever it is to make these photos acceptable for publication. That said, by the time it gets to my desk and we're doing editing, I will make adjustments for brightness, contrast. Sometimes even with a photographer's best efforts, you'll get like a green cast or a blue cast, depending on the lighting that you're using. So, we'll correct for that. But really, if you look at something like this, this photo wasn't too much different than what was emailed to me, so.
Well, bringing that up, I mean, I just, in this, the operations on the Story City branch.
Oh, that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I could tell because, you can see, and the photographs are very crisp, and you do have a whole series of them,
And here's the secret with that article in particular. The author reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, I want to do this story." And I had met Clark. If you read my editor's notebook, I was out in Iowa a couple years ago and had a chance meeting with him, and that's where it came about. So he emails me. He's like, "I want to do this story, but I only have cell phone pictures." And I'm like, "Let me see what they look like." And
these are cell phones?
Those are cell phone pictures. Don't tell anyone.
I won't. These came out really good.
And you know what? And depending on the phone that you're using, sometimes right out of the phone, they're good to go. Again, my rule is I want to see the majority of the scene in focus.
Right. Right.
I mean, typically most phones are working in some sort of macro setting where, okay, you focused on the train and everything else is blurry. Those are hard. Those are hard to work with. I would probably ask you to go back and try another method. But when people are talking about how much do we edit photography, I tell people, are you working on a project at your workbench and you're writing it up? Just you keep your cell phone and just keep taking pictures as you're building it. You don't need to set up this whole DSLR and floodlights. if
right.
First of all, you have enough light while you're working on your model. So if you have the same lighting on your model, just take pictures as you're going along and make sure they're crisp and in focus, and we can use those for a story. And again, with model railroad, when you're trying to photograph a whole scene that has depth, it gets trickier with a cell phone for sure. But like I said, if we're working on a story, I will ask to see a few samples. I'll generally be able to know where we're going, and I'm going to tell you, I can't use these photos as is. I need you to do something else. And that's part of me helping you get published. It's not me criticizing you and saying that you're a bad person.
Oh, yeah. Well, I hope anybody would not. I mean, Okay, I won't go there.
No,
Steve,
but no, people,
no, I can
people are very
understand that.
sensitive. Yeah, they're
I,
sensitive about their work.
no,
As it's they're sending me their work to be critiqued, and I have to be very gentle and be like, "You're not a bad person. Your work isn't bad. This photo, not so much. Let's get back to it." So
you know, I can, I write short stories, so I send them to literary magazines, and if they're interested, they come back, and they're all, the person who's going to put it in his magazine, it usually comes back with all red pen mark, on it
sure,
circled, and then he puts a little, or she puts a little thing in the corner. The first time I ever got one back, I was like, and then she wrote like a 3-page, like thing. This is what I want you to do. This is how I'd like you to shape this. What is this character saying, and why is he saying? And I got like really like, what? Who does it? This is my stuff. And my lovely wife pointed out, she's trying to help you, knucklehead. She ain't trying to hurt you, And then I learned from that, and you don't take it like, oh, what's going on here.
right,
But okay, I had these. Let me catch up on these few
sure,
questions.
yeah.
Steve N says, do you have any up and coming books in the works? Really enjoyed the 72-82 book on the WP that was done a few years back.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too. Dale Sanders worked on that one. Western Pacific Final Decade. That was a great one. We've got a number of projects in the works right now. Another project I just put to press is something called Alco Treasury. That's a collection of articles from the last 5 or 6 years from Railfan and Railroad Magazine,
Right.
and just various articles about Alco locomotives that we've collected and put into one new book. And that should be in our warehouse this week. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Right.
There was the painting and weathering with Scott Lupia that I put together over the summer. Last summer already. Yeah, it's been a while. I'm working on getting more model railroad books to press. I'm going to admit right away, for as many magazines as we publish, getting the model railroading books to press is a struggle for us. We seem to be really good with the prototype books. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else really up and pressing that's coming up. We have a Amtrak 50th anniversary book we're trying to finish up. But we always have a bunch of projects in production, and there's a number of editors that work at our house. So it's like, honestly, we when you see the ads in the magazine, that's how you know it's coming out. It's we don't publicize them until they're going to press. So
okay.
But I'd say, yeah, look for Alco Treasury, and if you liked the Western Pacific book that Dale did, I know he's working on a couple other projects he's trying to get finished, and I just can't say until we advertise them. So
right. One of the Human City Junction says interesting on the photos. So no focus stacking, which is really popular these days.
Focus stacking, yes. No, we encourage that. And I think what I meant more about, photos taken with a cell phone. Sometimes you can take a photo right out of your phone and it's great. And then sometimes, like we were talking about depth of field, and sometimes you need to use a DSLR, take multiple shots on different focus points, and then import them to your computer and do the photo stacking like Helicon Focus or any of those other software packages. If you have that ability, yes, absolutely do that. If you don't understand anything I just said in the last 45 seconds, you might want to phone a friend and find a photographer friend who can help you out.
Sure.
If you want to do a layout tour and you're like, wow, I'm a great modeler and I just don't have the equipment or the skill to photograph, find a friend or jump on one of the forums, be like, hey, I'm in Missouri, can someone help me shoot my layout for publication? But yes, photo stacking is encouraged to get that nice depth of field in those scenes.
Our good friend Scott Thornton says being an editor is an exercise in diplomacy.
And sometimes not. Sometimes I'll just tell you you're a jerk, but
Okay, well, that's how you roll, man. Wouldn't have it any other way.
No, we work really hard. 99% of the content in the magazine comes from our readers. We want readers to contribute. I've only had in my 2 years as editor at RMC, I've had maybe 2 negative experiences where I've had to tell someone, hey, the material you submitted is not really up to publication standard. I mean, one time some guy sent me a Bachman PCC trolley that looked like he painted it with a toothbrush. And, I try to be kind and be like, paint looks a little thick. Those pinstripes look like they're hand drawn. I totally get what you're trying to do. This isn't quite publication quality. And he just, reads me the riot act. And I'm like, is this what you want to publish and tell everyone that, this is not your best? I know this isn't your best work. I'm trying to help you, man. I had a fellow he wanted to do a layout tour, and he sends me photos. Trains are literally off the track. There's a stretch of track that's literally floating over a river. There's no bridge. And I'm like, is this literally what you're sending me for publication? This is not, I can see there's potential here. I wasn't like throwing him out of the office. I'm like, I can tell you have a decent layout here, but what you sent me for photographs is not reflecting that. And he reads me the riot act. And I'm like, I'm not the bad guy. You came to me and I'm telling you I can't publish this, and I'm trying to tell you how we can get you published because I want you in this magazine.
Sure. Sparky 107 asks, when someone submits an article, layout, photos, or story, how long does it take from the time you receive it to when it gets published? What is the process or timeline?
Yes.
Okay, they move on now, and
now the timeline is in flux. Like I said, I have the next 6 to 8 months of layout tours already scheduled out. That doesn't mean that something can't go wrong last minute night to pull from the archive. I have some article. I'm looking on the floor because I have most of our submissions come digitally. I still get a few through the post office, and I try to go through those as well. They're not they're not bad submissions, but because they're not in our digital workflow, I kind of have to be like, don't forget about them.
right.
Sometimes it could be a few months, sometimes it could be a couple years, and it really depends. And this could be any feature story. It could be, and sometimes I'm browsing various Facebook groups and I'll see something and I'll be like, I need that. You, sir, email me right now. We're getting this into the magazine, and I'm going to clear the decks because I'm so excited about the project. Sometimes I get a submission. I'm like, yes, I can use this, and it's going to be a few months. I don't have a slot for this right now. So there is no guarantee. And then sometimes I have authors be like, you've held on to my story for 3 years and I'm withdrawing it for publication and I'm going to submit it somewhere else. And I'm like, great. I'm sorry I couldn't use it right away. And if you can get it published somewhere else, that's not a bad thing. But
no, it's not. But that's happened to me. I've had a situation where I wrote for I wrote an article, a short story for a baseball digest, and I sent it, and I never heard anything. So I just thought, it went into,
into the file, yeah.
Yeah, I went into Circle 13, which
Yeah.
that's all right. The guy just didn't write back. About 2 years later, I get a phone call on the eve of the Yankee World Series, and the guy says, "Hey, is this Bill Graham?" And I'm like, "Yeah, who's this?" And he identifies, "I'm the editor of, Kinshore Baseball Digest. I'm wondering if I can still publish your short story. I'm reading it." And I said, "Oh, I thought you threw it away." And he's like, "No. What happened was I moved and I put it in a box, and I put it in one of the spare rooms. And then he said, unfortunately, I got divorced and I had to move again. So I'm in my new place and I'm going through all the stuff and I'm looking for stuff, New York, Brooklyn, Dodger stuff. And I came across your article." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." He says, "Well, I'll send you the contract and then you just sign it." And I said, "Do I get paid?" He goes, "Yeah, you get 4 free issues."
It's right, and that's compensation.
Then I
Yeah.
said, thank you very much. And so
Yeah.
it does happen, And on the lines of that, not only the photographs, but what about the writing of the article? What is it? Do you help the modeler with the article? Because not everybody is,
The first whenever I approach someone, the first thing I hear is I don't know how to take photos. The second thing I hear is I don't know how to write. And I'm like, yes, you do. And I always tell people, if you've never written a story before, just put the words on paper and you describe the project. Imagine you were telling your friend over the phone how you built a model. And that's how just go through the steps. And if there's something missing, I'll be like, hey, Bill, can you add a paragraph here about how you painted this thing or whatever we're missing? Um, we take care of sentence structure. We take care of grammar. Our magazine has its own style. You don't have to be
Hemingway.
right. You don't have to be a Hemingway to publish, but you do have to tell me what we're looking at. I don't. I consider myself to be a knowledgeable modeler. I don't know everything and every prototype. So if you're modeling a Canadian Pacific tool shed in the middle of the Saskatchewan prairie, you better give me the background on that tool shed and what it's doing in the middle of the prairie of Saskatchewan, because I don't know. I don't know. And why did you choose to model this tool shed? What's so great about it? Because you're not trying to impress me, but if the story is boring to me, it's going to be boring to the reader.
Yes.
And quite frankly, I feel that, and I it keeps me up at night. Literally, the stuff I put in the magazine each month, I'm like, are people going to be into this? Did I pick the right articles this month? Um, and it's funny. It's always the articles I'm worried about the most. I'm like, oh, is this worth putting in the magazine? That's what I get the most letters about. Like, this was the best article. I don't even like this prototype, and I was into this. And I'm like, I guess we picked the right thing.
I don't even
But
like the guy who wrote it, and I loved it.
right. Um, no, I actually had a guy write me a letter this week, and he's like, I had no interest in A, B, or C, and this was the best article, and I read it 3 times to make sure I didn't miss anything. And I'm like,
Exactly.
I yeah.
I agree.
But no, we
Mojave.
we will guide you. And the first time I started writing for magazines before I was, working anywhere, someone I knew reached out to me. He said, "Hey, can you do a book review for whatever?" And I'm like, "Sure." I did book reviews when I'm in high school, no problem. Book reports, right? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I cracked open one of the magazines and I read the book reviews, and I'm like, oh, they start here. They start with an introduction, then they
Right.
describe what the book's about, and then they finish off with their impressions. That's the secret. Like, if you don't know how to write a story, like, just copy the format right out of here. We won't be mad. Um,
Right. And thank God for Grammarly.
right. And that's the same thing. Like, spell check Grammarly, and if it gets by you, we're gonna read it. We have proofreaders. We're not gonna make you look dumb.
Of
Um,
course, that
but
would be the best.
yeah,
Mojave Model Railroad. Tina says, the more magazines I read, the more pictures I see, the more I realize I know nothing. You
it's
should
not that
go.
you know nothing. It's we're opening your horizons. I'm getting articles about things I never heard of or considered, and it's not that I don't know nothing. It's like, cool. Now my horizons are expanded. Now I know about this tool shed in Saskatchewan.
I have to tell you something. When computers first came out and everybody was getting one in their house, I got one, and we all got AOL, you know, and you go to the local, remember what was that, Blockbuster? And they used to have the
Sure.
free DVD thing that you could download AOL. And I did that, and I couldn't get it to work. And I called up the helpline, and I got this guy from out in Denver, Colorado. And the first thing I said to him was, "Hey, I'm really illiterate when it comes to computer." And the guy says to me, "No, you're not." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You just never done it before." He says, I'll work with you. And, that lesson that I got 15, 25 years ago has kind of stayed with me. It's like, you know, when I say to my son or to the youth group that I, in church, and they, well, I can't do that. Well, you never did it
Just
before.
haven't done
So
it yet. Yeah.
let's just try it. Let's see how you enjoy it. Let's see what works. Let's see what shakes out, you know, and then you go ahead and try it. And it may fail, but the beauty of it is that when you get that back, if you write something and you get that back and the person says, whenever I get rejected, and trust me, I get rejected a lot. I always follow up with, I always write the person who sent me the letter of rejection. And I say to them, thank you for your response. You didn't accept my article or my story. Could you tell me how I can improve it?
Right.
And then they send me back a whole, a lot of things and a lot of and I read it. I read it and take it. But if you don't know, if you just say okay and you toss it away, you'll never know.
Well, on my other job, when I'm working at Railfin and Railroad, I select all the news photos in the news section each month, and I'm trying to pick photos that are interesting, covering the whole country, whatever it is, and I get a lot of people sending me submissions, and I can't use them all. And then I sometimes I get submissions, I just automatically it's like the sun's not shining, I can't see what this is. Like this is not going to be a good photo. And usually I just write back, I'm like, hey, thanks for sending your photo. Just can't use it this month. Look forward to future, submissions. And they're like, well, how about this one? How about this one? And then after a while, I'm like, okay, let me literally walk you through, the sun's not shining. This is backlit. I don't know where the location is. It's out of focus, whatever it is. And I'm like, take photos that look like this, and it's like, here's how you can improve, stand on the right side of the sun. Include a photo prop in your scene, whatever it is. And it's like, I'm not saying that you're a bad photographer. I'm saying that the image that you sent me, I can't use.
Right.
And if you like the photo, that's great. You should absolutely take photos that make you happy. But not every photo you take is going to be good for publication.
Oh, of course.
Same goes for model railroading. Right. Everything you send me, I may not be able to use. And it's like, okay, that guy who painted the trolley with what I'm pretty convinced with a toothbrush, I'm sure it brought him joy. He was trying to model some Philadelphia trolley you remembered from childhood. And I'm like, I get what you're doing, brother. I just can't use what you sent me. But if it brings you joy, if your model railroad is great, everyone's model railroad is great. If it brings you joy and you're having fun, that's great. Just because I may not be able to use it in the magazine does not mean that what you're doing is bad or that you're a bad modeler.
Just doesn't fit what we're trying to do.
It just doesn't fit. And I should also say, you should not be one of these people. If your goal is getting published, that's great, but you should not be changing who you are and what you do just to make me happy or because you think this is what we want in the magazine. Do your thing, learn from others, and by all means, improve your modeling, grow as a modeler, but don't contort yourself into something that you're not.
That's a very good point.
And I saw Scott Thornton had a question there.
Well, Eric Hall of IMRO says, I do not know how to write. He says, ask my high school teacher. The only good thing about my writing is we do not have a grade below F. So where is Mr. Thornton? I thought I saw him here.
I think he was asking about the content of RMC and how we select the story.
How do you see RMC's content approach compared to your competition? Are you focused on the wide spectrum of interest or more specific?
I was joking with someone else that pretty much I just put things in the magazine that interest me, and we just see what happens. But no, that's not the case at all. I'm working with Harry and I'm working with Justin, and I know each month that we're going to have a layout tour. I'm going to have a construction feature, either about a structure, freight car, some scenery. I'm trying to get a wide variety of topic areas. We'll probably have a scale drawing from Jim Kincaid or one of our other contributors. So, okay, between scale drawings, layout tours, construction features, and then into the columns, we're talking about kit bashing, painting and weathering, photography, so we're trying to hit a range. And then sometimes what I'll do in the magazine, we'll have November issue just went to press, and we had a fellow talk about his modeling the Southern Pacific in Guadalupe, California. And I also had a story about modeling the Southern Pacific station in Millbrae, California. And I'm like, they're not on the same division, but like, hey, let's show this SP layout and let's do an article about an SP depot.
Yeah.
In the September issue, we did an article about you were talking about how to add waterfront operations to your layout on the N scale Tenino Western. And on the piggybacking on the Tenino Western story, Jim Rose had drawings of New York Central Tugboat 34.
Yes.
So I'm like, let's put these together. But I do try to make sure that we cover not only a geographic area, like with the layout tours. I need to make sure we're not doing 5 Southern Pacific layouts in a row.
Right. Mixing them up.
And I do have favorite railroads other than the New York Central. But trying to make sure we're not doing all Eastern stuff, trying to make sure we're not doing all Western stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, you kind of mix it up. I've seen it, in Vermont and upper New England, and
Canadian. we try to keep, but not even just geographic, but also different eras as well. Modern, steam, narrow gauge.
Right. Okay.
We try to do it all. And really, it depends. When someone writes me and they say, you don't publish enough XYZ. And I'm like, well, I need you to send me some XYZ because we only publish what we get.
Right. A story. Yeah. Split Rock 323 says, Eric Hall put a lot of work on that trolley, and he still uses the same toothbrush.
I didn't want to name names.
Yeah. Eric Hall replied, that was my secret.
I know it wasn't Eric Hall, but look, everyone has different skill. And that's the other thing we're trying to build up too. When I took the editor's chair, I brought back some of the columns that I remembered from when I was younger. Company Photographer was a column about taking pictures on your model railroad and teaching you the skills so you can do it. Painting and weathering is is huge these days, and we have way more tools to work with. And growing up reading Model Railroader, one of my favorite columns was Paint Shop, where it was just like, it was either one of the editors or one of the readers just being like, I took this freight car and I sprayed it and threw some decals on it, put a couple of details, and now it's a boxcar. And it's like, that's great.
Yeah.
So that's where the painting and weathering column comes from. Craftsman Workshop, we have a variety of contributors there, and that's just, sometimes it's skills, sometimes it's projects, sometimes it's skills related to a project, but we're bringing back all these columns because I hope the features that we publish are inspirational, but sometimes you can't always learn, we've got this great layout tour. Does that really teach you how to build a layout? You can see what the finished layout looks like and how it operates. But I hope some of these recurring columns, I want people to take pictures. I want people to be better at painting and weathering. I want people to think about projects that they can accomplish, and that is the impetus for all the content that we choose.
Right. Sparky 107 says, if I wanted to have an article published, would the process happen faster if I dropped it off in person, handed it to you, and then waited on the front porch of your house for an answer?
No.
Rochester, you still got the 911, right? Yeah. Okay. Just saying, Sparky. Not that you're a threat, but
Sparky, just want to let you know, it also snows here 9 months out of the year, so it could be a long, cold wait.
He's a Canadian, so
Oh, practically my neighbor then. Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
He understands.
Exactly. Split Rock 323 says, how many photos should we send for sampling to see if it meets RMC quality?
I'll usually say, like, someone approached me with a story. I'd be like, hey, send me 2, 3 photos so I can see where we're at. And I'll be able to tell right away. And also for some of you folks who share your work on, various Facebook groups, I can also tell from the photos that you share, um, a lot of times I will be out trolling some group and, I see a great photo of a great model and I'd be like, you get in here. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So if you're already sharing your pictures online and I've already approached you more than once, um, I think you're in good shape. But I'll definitely ask for 2 or 3 pictures and I'll coach you through it and we'll work it out.
CV Railroad in HO scale says, does the magazine have tutorials and instruction articles?
Yes, that is. I like to think that is almost every article. And we present them in different ways. A lot of times, someone is doing an article. Hey, here's how I kit bashed a model of this boxcar, and it might be a specific model of a specific railroad, specific era, specific details that might not be your prototype, but the process is the same. Stripping down the model, putting on details, prepping it for paint. Um, again, it might not be your prototype, but I think those types of stories, you start to understand the process and the skills. And then again, in our specific columns, like the painting and weathering column or the photography column, where we do talk about skills, I consider those to be, tutorials in a sense. But it's funny that you mentioned that spending a lifetime growing up reading any model railroad magazine or book I could get my hands on. Um, Growing up, didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot of time, didn't really have access to the hobby tools and the hobby supplies. But I could buy a magazine at a yard sale for 25 cents, right? So I read everything. My collection of model railroader goes back to 1941. Um, um, Frankly, RMCs are just harder to find because they were printed on pulp paper and they just disintegrate. But my magazine collection goes back years. I have books and I would just read, read, read. I didn't understand everything I'm reading, but I still absorbed it. And when it came to building like my first serious model railroad, when I'm working, with other people, it was already up here. And I'm like, wait, how did I know how to do this? And it was
Right.
literally a lifetime of every book, every magazine. You just absorb, absorb, absorb. And again, it's not the specific, I'm not telling you to turn the screwdriver 2 degrees to the right. We're talking about process. We're talking about take this boxcar, strip it down, glue on this piece, move this other piece, wash it off, prime it, paint. We're talking about processes. I'm not telling you I move the spray can back and forth 4 times.
Right, exactly.
It,
Exactly.
it it comes to you.
Scott Thornton says, I love the variety of subjects and skill sets represented. That's exactly what gets me excited about receiving the magazine each month.
Oh, thanks, Scott. I see your check cleared. Thank you.
Yeah, he did. Eric Hall says, operations is what I'm fully interested in. More about the people and layout operated by them. Not so much about how I use it to use a derailleur in my operational stuff. Yeah, well, you know, to each his own, I guess, and to what floats the boat. I have to say, in one of your earlier articles, one of your earlier magazines, not last month, I think it was the month before, I was, going through reading it, and I came across a short article of a guy who was doing 3D printing out in South Dakota,
Mm-hmm.
and I forget what his name is. We had him on. Anyway, what happened was I called him up and said, "Hey, you want to be on my show?" And he was like, "Yeah." I said, I saw your a short blip in the in Model Railroad Craftsman." He goes, "Oh yeah. Somebody reached out to us, and I talked to somebody on the phone, and then that was published. I was like, oh, okay. Turns out that guy was so interesting that he has a 3D printing facility in North South Dakota, and it's a multi-million-dollar operation. And
Oh yes.
this guy is so down to earth. He said, I said, how did you get into 3D printing? And he said, I have two machines that I have to keep running 24/7.
I'm
So
trying to remember if it's the same person I know.
he says, so what happened was a club in our town came to us and said, can you make fire hydrants?
Yes.
So we made fire hydrants for them. And I said, wow, we can do this. So he went to the college and he hired an intern to do graphics. And she's working. Still, she graduated. Now she's working with them. And he's all about keeping the college kids from South Dakota in South Dakota because he wants to expand the business. So he's now building a new building with $1 million machine that he's getting into metal fabricating and printing. This guy was so interesting, it was unreal. So thank you for that.
No, and it's amazing how quickly that business blew up too. Like, we met at the convention, and it was just fascinating where it's like, the regular business was just being idled, and he's like, well, I can make these models on the side, and now the models are overtaking everything else.
Right.
Yeah.
When he was on the show, he says, I take ideas from everybody that's and guys started throwing ideas at him. He was like writing them down, And then I had a friend of mine reach out to him because he wanted him to make a subway car for him. And he was like, yeah, we can do that for you. Let's talk. So they're still in negotiations of how they're going to do it. But, and stuff. Sparky 107 says, so is each, a little easy for you to say, Bill. So is each issue focused on one or two themes, or do you add a vast variety of subjects? And is each issue based on a template, so each month it's set up in the same manner?
No to the first, yes to the second. When we're putting together a magazine each month, like I said, occasionally I will pair up stories. Like Jim Kincaid was doing a series of pulpwood flat cars. And in one of the issues, I had an article about how to model pulpwood flat cars and pulpwood loads. That was just kind of, a little bit of serendipity there. But for the most part, we just kind of do a random sampling from, different areas of the hobby and different aspects. But as far as templating, one of the things that I always enjoyed growing up reading magazines, reading a magazine is an experience, and you probably don't even notice because you take it for granted the way the magazine is set up. But think about when you get your favorite magazine in the mail and you're standing on the porch, what do? You flip right to your favorite section because you know where your favorite section is, and it's in the same spot every time. That's by design. And the way...
It's funny you should mention that.
But that's what we all do. We're all like, oh man, I'll go right to, and when you flip to about here, you're going to be in it, and that's what it's all about. So when I took over the editor's chair, I wanted to bring back some elements to Railroad Model Craftsman that I remembered just from working in the Carson's days, but even like, growing up reading the magazine, it's like telling any story. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so with RMC, the way it's designed and laid out now, we have news right up front. And news includes product announcements, product reviews, timetable events, letters to the editor, things that are newsy and need to get up, that's all your news is right up front. And then we have the perspective editorial, which comes from readers. Perspective is your gateway into the feature well. And we call it the feature well because it's uninterrupted. It's an uninterrupted block. You're not going to find any interruptions from starts until the column starts. Now you get to the back of the book, features are over. Now it's time for the columns and, what we call the back of the book. This is where Crest, company photographer, painting and weathering, diverging points, and editor's notebook is the last thing you're going to read. That's some parting words from myself, or maybe sometimes it's Justin or Harry. I know sometimes in years past, and even in the Karstens days, Hal Karstens would have a little editorial right up front. That was the first thing, and he was the publisher. He'd do what he wants. It's his magazine. Stephen Priest had his editor's column right up front, and I'm like, I don't know. You don't get the magazine to hear from me. You want to read the magazine and see what everyone else has to say, and I'll give you the parting words at the end. But that's how the magazine is laid out, and we do have a budget where receiving all the sections, all the sections will have the same page count each month. And there's a certain number of pages allotted to features, so you're not going to be surprised going month to month, and you'll always be able to find your favorite section.
Right. Well, I have to say that yes, since you've taken over, I know that there's less of you in here, and I don't mean to sound, condescending in any sense of way, but I noticed that right away. It wasn't the editorial up front. And and you're right about the layout of the magazine. Split Rock 323 says, "How often do you have the Dremel Kit Bashing Award /article?"
Well, Split Rock, I'm glad you asked, because it should be monthly, and we just talked about this elsewhere, and I've been trying to get more people to submit. We ran out of submissions, which is why we stopped running the Dremel Kit Bashing Award. Good news is I have a few lined up for the next few months, so we're back on. But yeah, we need people to submit. It's been a part of the magazine since 1970s. Strong partnership with Dremel, and they've supported the contest all these years. We need people to submit. And the rule is it has to be something at least 50% commercial parts. It's a kit bashing award. It's not just a painting and detailing award. We want to see some sort of substantial modification. But yes, we absolutely do want your submissions. And same thing, you just contact me. Hey, I've got this idea and I built this model. And I'll say yes or no. And if I say no, I'll be like, no, that's not a good Dremel, but that might be a better feature for us. So either way, we're going to get you in the magazine.
Right. I have to tell you that your magazine has truly, I steal a lot. I did. I saw this realistic, for diorama, and
sure.
And what attracted me was I'm finishing up my harbor scene, and I'm trying to commit this to a 5-story freight house in the back with the 2-story in the front, but there's a lot of empty space. And what attracted me was the abandoned rails, the abandoned wood ties. Right. So I said, that would be great to do on my layout. And I read the whole article, and I was like, that's something I'm going to use. I'm going to take that element out, and I'm going to put it on that in the back there to give it so that when you walk up to it and you look in behind the building, the first 2-story and then down. So it's very inspirational and very, timely. And, I don't have a problem stealing material from you. But Eric Hall says, what happened between the time that RMC sent out the notice that it was going out of business and you guys picking it up?
Oh, yeah, that's when Karstens went out of business.
And then White River came in.
So, yeah, I mean, Karstens went out of business, and White River purchased Railfan and Railroad and Railroad Model Craftsman, and start them back up again. That there's no drama. Karstens just went out of business. I wish there was more drama to it, but it just, when you run out of money, you stop doing things.
Folded up your tent and move on.
But also, like, I think we knew that RMC and Railfan were two titles that were not going to go away. They're part of the hobby and they're part of the marketplace.
Right.
And it was just fortuitous that as Carson's was closing, White River was able to come in and purchase the titles. And then there was a period of adjustment where we had to get everything back up and running. So yeah, 2014 was a weird year.
I have to say that you guys at Model Railroad Craftsman have been very generous. I don't think that you guys. This was before you came on board, but Railroad Model Craftsman was very, very generous to Model Railroading Live, because we used to do when we used to do this show under a different name. We would, at the end of the show, we would do a giveaway, and I just happened to reach out to Craftsman and asked if they'd be willing to do, subscriptions, 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And they sent me back a stack of 3-month subscription that you just have them send it in and we'll take care of the rest, and they don't have to pay. And I was like, and I called them up and I was like thanking them profusely, and they were like very like, oh yeah, no problem, don't worry about it. And I was like, how come they're not getting excited that this is like, and they're like, no, that's great. So they've always been very very, very giving. John Benicki have always enjoyed RMC. It has always been a great magazine, and it's just getting better.
Oh, thanks very much, John. Appreciate that.
It is a good magazine, and
it's all right.
I have to say, is there a friendly competition between you and between this magazine and Model Railroading?
I don't think I hate to use the word competition or competitors. I mean, we have colleagues in this industry.
Okay.
I'm friends with all of them. I can call up the editor tomorrow and be like, hey, I got a problem here. It's all part of our professional. We're in this industry together, and we speak with different voices. Whenever I meet someone on the street and they're like, well, RMC and Model Railroad, they're just the same magazine, just different packaging. And I'm like, do you pay attention to the media that you consume? Because we speak with very distinct and separate voices. It's all trains, but we are definitely speaking to the active model railroader. And I think where we are different is that we are going in depth with more construction, more scratch building, more kit bashing, more of the active part of the hobby. And other than that, the only place that we compete is literally for advertising dollars, and pardon me, that's probably the only part where we actually have any type of competition.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When it comes to business, when it comes to the actual just hobby of model railroading, is we're not throwing darts at each other. You can't have Coke without Pepsi. You can't have McDonald's without Burger King. It's all part of the.
Very good analogy.
You can't be a market of one. It's all part of the family.
Right, exactly. That's good. Sparky 107 wants to know: do you, Otto, have a favorite part in the magazine? And do you remember your favorite article from years gone by?
I'm going to say my favorite part of the magazine these days, I really get excited about the painting and weathering column, because there's just so much great technique, and there's so many new paints and materials that are emerging right now that we're learning how to use. Flow coil is gone. There's no flow coil. Testers, get your bottles now, but testers is gone. So you better start learning how to use these paints from AK and MIG, and we're trying to show you how. But don't panic, because Flow Coil Grimy Black is gone, because there's actually much better formulations and colors out there, and we're going to show you how. So keep an eye on the painting and weathering column. But I've always enjoyed, and I enjoy. I've done a fair amount of custom painting myself. I enjoy just taking like a car and getting some paint on there and throwing some decals, and hey, now I have a car. That's always
Yeah,
been a favorite.
yeah, exactly.
Um, a favorite article from years past. I have two of them, and they're really obscure. And again, they were from magazines I picked up when I was a kid at a tag sale, so they were like out of print. But one was a magazine from 1981, and it described this lady who was building a model of a Canadian Pacific station in Manitoba. It was called Inglis. And I didn't know where Manitoba was, didn't really care about the Canadian Pacific. But like the way she described the process of it was the station from her hometown, and the way she described the process of building it and how she detailed it, and how the gas station sign across the street from when she was a kid. And like I was like 13, 14 at the time, and I read that article over and over and over because I'm like, I'm into what you're doing. And I'm like, yes, this is cool. And like I didn't the prototype wasn't for me, but I'm like, yes. And that's where I realized that RMC, and I grew up reading Model Railroader. That's when I realized that RMC spoke with a different voice. It has a distinct and a separate voice. And then I think it was 1993. I remember like Gary Coleman and his N Scale Railroad were on the cover, and I just remember that always just struck me because I remember this is like 25 years before Rod Stewart shows up on
Right,
Model Railroader, right? And
right.
it's like, here's Gary Coleman from Different Strokes, and I'm like, wait, what? And I just that just always made me laugh, and that was always kind of a big inside joke amongst the guys at RMC too. But
Yeah, yeah. Sparky wants to know, do you have a layout?
I do and I don't. I do have. There's these two modules I built back in 2019 from our Consider the Commuter Project Railroad series that we ran. And as soon as I moved into the house here, I set those modules up in the basement so people stop asking me if I had a layout in the basement. And I moved in here over the summer, and I've just been busy. Pardon me. Just busy moving in, getting unpacked, magazine deadlines, volunteering at the museum. Just been a very busy summer, but you know, I have started doodling around with some track plans and trying to see how things can fit in the basement. So I'm working towards building a layout in HO. Yes.
Yeah, cool. Well, Otto, I want to thank you very much for being on the show and
Thanks
being.
for having me.
Oh no, it was our pleasure, our honor to have you on the show and sharing, you know, uh, about railroad model craftsmen and how you do it and why you do it. And I could see the passion that you have for the hobby and for getting it out there. It really is. I think that's what's so great about this hobby is that I remember when I first got into the hobby. I got into the hobby in '81, and then I disappeared, because work, family, the whole thing, and retired. And I remember seeing these guys on YouTube, and I was like, "Oh man, I wish I could meet them." And then I did meet them, and I remember one of them, was like said to me, confident, not he just said personally, he said, "Listen, Bill," he said, "I'm just like you. I put my pants on one leg at a time. I'm nobody special. I work just like you, and I do what I do." So, but I'm glad that you answered my email, and that we were able to get this together. And
Here we
listen,
are.
yeah, here we are. Listen, guys, go out there and subscribe. If you're not already a subscriber to the magazine, please go out and subscribe to Railroad Model Craftsman and pick it up. It's good price, and it's worth the money. I sit every morning and I dog ear my magazine and I eat it with my scrambled eggs.
100 pages of pure model railroading content each month.
It's a dream come true. I'm living the dream. That's what I'm doing every morning, and it's good. And it's very good and very informative. And I think you guys, so go out and get it. It's not that bad. You spend more money on other junky stuff than you than you do on this. So, and you get it every month. My mailman. I was telling Otto before we signed off. I was telling Otto, this October issue did not come because a friend of mine called me up and he said, "Hey, did you get the October issue?" And I said, "No, you got yours." And he goes, "Yeah." And I didn't get it, so I wrote a letter to White River subscription department, and I got this really nice young lady who told me that it will probably be, if you don't get it by October 15th, call us and we'll send one out to you. And I was like, okay. And as soon as I finished writing that email and sending off my reply to her, my mailman came up onto the porch and he had my magazine. And I said, "Pete, what do you?" He goes, "Listen, I had this since yesterday. I was reading it on my lunch break." He says, "I had lunch and I was reading your magazine, and I know I'm not supposed to do that. It's the U.S. mail, and I hope the U.S. Postal Department doesn't see this and get him in trouble. It was an honest mistake." So he read it and he got it to me, and I'm like, okay, but I got it. But you guys should get it too. So
Hey, Bill, I got a surprise for you for the December issue. There's going to be a topic that might be near and dear to your heart. We're going to feature a layout. It's a micro layout based on the Arlington engine house of the Staten Island Railway.
Oh,
in the Baltimore and Ohio era.
Yeah, there used to be a man. Oh, what was his name? He lived 3 houses down. He was the yard master.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, for the B&O, and he was your typical yard master. He used to smoke a cigar and he used to curse a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like, "You really are a yard master." And his whole backyard was filled with he had bricks, as pavement stones.
Right.
And I looked and I said, "Hey, Sal, how did you, these bricks, how did you get them all here?" He goes, "Bill, when the boxcar pulls up to the platform?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "And then the platform's here." He says, "That space in between?" He says, "Whatever falls on the rail is ours." So I had to think about that, and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Fell off the back
Moraldo,
of a truck,
Moraldo, Mr. Moraldo. That was he was the and he used to tell me interesting stories. He used to say, "Did you know that the B&O Railroad, the train operators, the engineers, they used to have families on both sides, New York and in Baltimore?" I said, "Serious?" He goes, "We had guys that were married and had kids up here, and they lived in the Stapleton area, and then they would go back to Baltimore, and they had families married and kids in Baltimore." I said, "Serious?" And he goes, "Yeah." And that was a common practice on railroad.
Yeah, it was a real interesting operation. So yeah, look for it in December issue.
Yeah.
We're taking you to Staten Island.
Oh, well, good. Now you got my juices flowing. I think I might write an article on my South Brooklyn and send it to you and stuff and see what turns out. But anyway, listen, Otto, thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule and for all the things you do for Model Railroading and for publishing the magazine, your staff, everybody down to the janitor that picks up everything. And just thank you so much for everything that you do. And so again, guys, go out there and subscribe to the Railroad Model Craftsman. And thank you guys for watching. No, we're not giving out free. I'm sorry, Sparky, we're not tonight. But thank you guys for joining in on the show, and thank you for being a part of Model Railroading Live once again. Tomorrow night, on the 7th, that's Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, Johnny's Train Talk Show will be back. You guys can be a part of this. So just come in and watch, because Johnny's got some new exciting things that are going on in the Johnny's Chain Truck Show. And I hate to say this again, but Mr. Sir Rod Stewart, I'm so sorry. I know every time we do this with you, I know you left. Ari came to me on the thing and told me that you had left in a huff, and I do apologize, Mr. Stewart. Hopefully we can get you on next time we're on the show. But anyway, you guys out there, thank you for watching, because if you didn't, we speak into dead air. And so you be well, you be safe, but most of all, you be blessed. And we'll see you guys on the radio.